Hey, everybody, and welcome. Just until 2 seconds ago, I thought my computer was about to crash, but here we are. We are live. The broadcast is working. Everything seems to be just fine. So that's the good news. My name is Jeff Blankenburg. I am our Chief Technology Evangelist here at Amazon Alexa. And as we do every week at this time, I'm here to answer your questions about Alexa development, ambient computing, voice interfaces, all of that stuff. And what I like to do is start these episodes with a few updates. What's the latest and greatest? What's going on these days? And so I have a couple of things to share with you. The first one is if you are in the Cincinnati, Kentucky, Columbus, Indianapolis kind of area, there's an event coming up this Thursday called the Momentum Developer Conference. It's held at I think it's at the Hard Rock Casino right near Cincinnati, and it's a fantastic day of software development content. And so I'll be there. I'll be there speaking. But in addition to me, there's a huge array of other people there talking about all sorts of different best practices and lessons in the world of software. So if you missed out on it, you can go to momentumdevcon.com. Like I said, I will be there, and I hope maybe I'll see some of you as well. Also, if you missed it, last week we announced the winners of our hackathon. We had a hackathon going on for I always forget the name of this thing. But it's meant for folks that are 55 plus, and the idea was to build skills that helped that community kind of thrive, do things, continue to live an active lifestyle. And so, as a result of that, we announced it at the Voice Summit last week in Washington, D.C. The winner of that hackathon was a skill called Alexa Family Journal, and it was a way to give family members and loved ones, things like that, the ability to share images and videos and video files with each other through their Alexa devices. Very, very cool concept, and something that I hope that we'll see in production and available for everybody in the very near future. So Alexa Family Journal is the skill that won. Also, just as a side note, while I was at the Voice Summit, I got to meet a number of you, a number of the folks that are here regularly on our channel, but also folks that I've had many conversations with over the years. And one of those people was Brian Tarbox. Brian is a regular here on office hours, and he's actually going to be joining me on stream next week. And we're going to talk about skill development and things that he's working on specifically in next week's episode. So if you'd like to meet Brian in person and see the kinds of things that he's thinking about, the skills that he's building, he'll be here with me next week. And then there's one other thing that I normally do at this point, which is that I now kind of transition over and introduce you to the guests that I have on the show. This week, we don't have any guests. And so I'd like to take just this brief moment to ask all of you a question that are here watching. For the guests that we've had here in the past, and we've had a wide variety from a number of parts of the product team and across the Alexa organization, I'd love to know which ones were the most beneficial, the most helpful to you, because we do expect to bring people back over a period of time. And I'd love any feedback any of you have on the people that you found the most useful, the teams that you want to talk with more regularly. I know one that specifically on our list is the analytics team. We haven't had them here yet, but I know that's something that we've had some questions about. But if there are other people that we've already had, or if there's teams that you're really interested to hear from, I'd love any feedback you have, and you can certainly leave those in the comments, and we'll take a look. But that's that for today. So the rest of this episode, the rest of the time that we're here together, I'm here to answer your questions. I see we've already got a number of comments in the chat, which is fantastic. And if you have any questions about anything related to Alexa or building or software or whatever, I'd be happy to chat with you about those things. If you missed it, I also am now building an Alexa skill live. I'm doing this on my own channels currently. I think we may start doing this on the Alexa channels as well. But I'm building a skill for Alexa skill developers. And right now I'm building the modules to cover all the different kinds of edits you can make to your voice with SSML. So this is things like prosody and volume and putting breaks in and adding what we call domains, which makes Alexa sound more like a newscaster or conversational or something like that. Or we have emotion, right? We can add excitement or disappointment to the voice. You may not have even realized you can do some of those things, but all of those are available in SSML. And so part of the skill, what I'm doing is allowing you to modify the voice so you can say, hey, set the domain to newscaster. and it changes the domain for you. And then the rest of the time that you're talking to the skill, you're hearing that newscaster voice, and you can get a feel for what that voice sounds like. Or maybe you want to hear what it sounds like to have a little bit of excitement with more volume, right? All of those things are going to be levers that you can kind of play with in this skill. So if you want to see me build that, it's usually pretty early in the morning. I go probably 8:15 Eastern time until 9:30 or 10 o'clock a few days a week, almost exclusively Tuesdays and Thursdays, but I may mix an extra day or two in there. And I do that on my YouTube channel and on my Twitch channel and other places. So if you want to tune in, we can talk about stuff there as well. If you're asking, you'll actually get to see how I build everything. And if you have questions about how or why or what or whatever, you're welcome. Folks like Kevin Evans and a few of the other folks that are on here even joined me this morning. So you're all welcome to join, and if you'd like to check that out. Okay, let's welcome some people. Brian Tarbox is here. Gavin Watson, Habuma. I see that Amanda reminded me that it was called Aging and Engaging. I don't know what the hackathon was. I don't know why I can never remember that, but it was the Aging Engaging Hackathon, so thank you for that. Kevin Evans is here. Prisoner 4044 is here. Habuma, Sai Kumar is here. Thank you all for being here. I really do appreciate it. Let's see. Paul Stubbs shared the link to the challenge winners on Twitch. Thank you for doing that, Paul. Dave Curley is here. I got to meet Tapster in person in DC as well, so that was very nice. Good to see you. Gavin Watson says the Contact Us team is someone he would like to interact with more, and sometimes can get frustrated regarding feedback and delays in responses. It was very helpful to understand their processes. Well, that's good to know, Gavin. Actually, our developer advocacy team, the DAG Developer Advocacy Group, they are actually lurking here behind the scenes. They're here to make sure that if we have issues or things that can be escalated while we're here on office hours, they're here kind of paying attention behind the scenes. So I'm sure that makes them feel good to know that having them here on air is always beneficial. Prisoner says, Jeff, I saw you mentioned on your coding stream you're working on the SSML engine. Care to talk briefly about what the engine is doing and how it works? I think I just did that. I just hadn't seen your question till right now. But the idea is to allow you to talk to a skill and instantly hear all of the different levers and knobs and modules about what all the different things you can do with SSML. So it's going to be broader than that. The skill's kind of big, but those will be some little kind of twiddly bits you can play with and modify as you'd like. I'm also playing with, I started working on it after the stream just because I was so interested in it. But one of the things you can do is introduce a break in SSML, a pause, right? And so I was trying to come up with a clever way to let you hear what those different pauses sound like. And one of the things I'm playing with is that I have a standard sentence that is just like a break is a way to add pause to speech. And then what I thought I would do is you could say, well, set a break to medium or extra strong or extra weak. Those are all different kinds of breaks you can set. And I thought it'd be cool to introduce a break in between each word. So you hear the same sentence over and over and over. But when you ask for a break of strong or extra strong, the break is much longer in between each word. And if you say none or extra weak, then it's very, very quick between each word, right? So that's something I'm playing with. I don't know if that's where I'm gonna land, but it's really kind of fun to come up with an illustrative way to show some of these SSML concepts that are otherwise you'd have to like set up a skill and go into some tool and like add a bunch of code just to hear what it sounds like. I think this is a cooler way to go about that. So you can just talk to a skill while you're working. And I see you responded there in a second. So Brian Tarbox says, at Voice Summit, I asked people which emotions people would like Alexa to be able to express. The winners were happy, frustrated, sad, and angry. I think that the disappointed emotion sounds very much like sad. I don't know that it entirely sounds just disappointed. Disappointed can often have a bit of an anger tone to it, and the disappointed emotion that's available sounds more like sad to me. But I could see how you could use them for both. But I think that there is something to be said for coming up with other emotions like happy, frustrated, or angry. Thomas Lawrenson wants to know if the development testing directly through VS Code is available outside of the US. Yeah, as far as I know, that's a universal thing. There's nothing that would be locale specific about that. You should be able to just spin that right up. And all of the documentation, if you look for the VS toolkit for Alexa toolkit for VS Code, if you go search for that, you'll find a whole page in our tech docs about everything you need to set up, including the local debugging that I'm using in my live streams. Oh, Alan said, okay, so we continue to have a conversation out of sync. Says it's very cool. Now I need to check out your SSML engine to see how it dovetailed with some work I was doing with multivocal. Yeah, I think that's one of the things that is surprising to me is that I tried to mix things like excited with newscaster. Which one wins, right? And in this case, newscaster wins. Excited doesn't have any effect at all. And I think it's very useful for a developer to know, like, oh, if I use that voice or if I use the conversational domain, well, then a lot of this other stuff isn't going to really apply anyway. And there probably should be a grid or something in our tech docs that kind of illustrates what that hierarchy looks like. But this is helping me understand it. And then I can work with our tech docs team to introduce something like that, because I think it's very useful to know. Okay. Startup is here. Hawk 2000, Rockalock, Trade Last. Hello, everyone. David Curley says break is really useful for leaving up an APL screen after an end session. He'll add an extra 5 seconds. That's a good tip, just to add that onto the end so that things stick around for a little while longer. Lita Gemini says, I've heard Alexa sound happy, but only for special phrases, right? Those speech cons are something that for certain phrases, Alexa will sound very happy. There's also ones that she will not sound so happy. Here, I can give you an example of that, actually. Maybe. Alexa, open Voice Developer.
This is Voice Developer. What should we do now?
Say wah wah.
Dude, did you know that you can ask for sound effects? Just say something like, play a laser sound effect.
Change the domain to normal.
I've changed your domain to normal. You can always change it again by saying, change the emotion to conversational, long form, music, fun, news, or normal. As a note, fun is only available in the Japanese locale. What can I help you do next?
Stop. I was thinking about how I could get her to say the
Toodaloo, caribou.
I don't think I like that sound effect anymore. I was thinking of that being a way to like let you know that like, hey, it's leaving, but I'm not sold on that sound anymore. Anyway, there are a lot of speech cons that are kind of like disappointment sad, and I think I have a whole. Let me see if I can find them here quickly. Speech con, disappointment. Wah wah is definitely one of them. Well, I'm not going to make her say it again, but like a yikes is one, wah wah is one. There's like, oh, shucks or shoot. Those are a couple of disappointment ones. Oops or oof. She also says, Mamma Mia. That's another good one. What I don't need you guys doing is making audio clips of me saying those words and then using those in your skills. Let's not do that. Anyway, that's enough about speech cons. But breaks are cool, and there's lots of other stuff that I'm going to be playing with. So if you guys want to get a feel for how I'm building that, you can tune into the streams. It's also available in my GitHub. I push the code immediately at the end of the stream out to my GitHub repository, so you can see the progress that's been made there as well. Barbara Beefire Speak says, sentences for showing off the power of the pause. This is interesting. I wonder if I can grab this URL. Not easily. Let's see if I can copy that. We'll do something here quick. Notepad. When I don't have guests, I get a little more hands-on. I can do some stuff. I'm not trying to do all the things at once here. Let's see if I can open that URL you just sent me. 7 times. Oh, so the article is called 7 Times When a Comma Has Made a Major Difference. There's a great book that I have called Eats, Shoots, and Leaves, which is a representation of when commas are really important. But that's cool, Barbara. I will check that out a little later. Okay, Thomas Lawrenson says, it keeps failing when I try it. I will read the docs again. Thomas, I've also had some struggles with this, where I've had some issues getting the local debugging set up, but it is not a geography or a locale thing. So let me see if I can point you in the right direction as well. Hit me up on Slack and we can have a conversation about this, because I can even then just send you, there's a file. The file is called, it's in a folder called VS Code, .VS Code actually, and there's a launch JSON file. In fact, here, we can do it this way. That's what GitHub is for, right? If I go to my GitHub and I open that up, and in there's a folder called VS Code, and in there's a file called launch.json. I can just send a link to this file directly into the chat, and then I don't have to have you chase it somewhere else. So I just dropped a link to the launch.json file that I use for launching my skill using local debugging. I don't know if that'll help you. You can compare that to what you have and maybe notice a difference or something like that. Fangelm says, in SSML, is there an interpret as AM PM for a 24-hour value? I believe that there is, actually, and I have to look at this. Amazon.time. I think that there is a way to do this. That's not really what I meant. Amazon.time slot value. No. So Amazon.time is actually a pretty powerful built-in slot type that allows you to say, like, let's see if I have Amazon.time. And if I look at this, it returns 423. I think the Amazon.time slot already operates on 24-hour time anyway. And so the value here, let me copy a link and come back to StreamYard. I'll drop this in the chat as well. This is a link to the docs for the slot type reference for Amazon.time. It should do everything that you're describing, Fangelm, which is 11:59 at night or 2:15 p.m. or whatever. And it looks to me, I thought this was the case, that it returns all of the values in 24-hour time, specifically the ISO 8601 time format. So I think that's what you want. And if you just use that, it should work very nicely. What's nice about Amazon.time, which will say like 1:30 in the afternoon, like it does a bunch of other translations, right? 4:23 in the morning, it knows that that's AM. It knows all of those kinds of things. But there's also Amazon.date, and Amazon.date is powerful because it'll not only take things like the 1st of January or July 23rd and those kinds of things, but it'll also allow the user to say next Tuesday. And it doesn't give you next Tuesday as words or anything like that. It translates it to the date and gives you the date format for whatever next Tuesday happens to be, which I think is also remarkably powerful because we don't have to build all that logic ourselves. The slot is already doing all of that work for us. So Amazon.date, Amazon.time, take a look at it. All right. I guess that's another question is, you were going the other way now that I just realized that. You were saying, is there SSML that I can use to convert a time and turn it into AM or PM? No. I guess I should have read more closely, and I'm sure someone down below is like, Jeff, you're not talking about the same thing that Fangelm is. My apologies. No, I don't believe that there is any SSML that will do any of that kind of conversion. But I do believe that as part of the core SSML, and Alan is mentioning this here, Prison 4044 is mentioning that the core SSML spec does support that, but I don't believe that Alexa's SSML implementation does, which is unfortunate. All right. Miguel Costa says on LinkedIn, hey, Jeff, disappointment is a feeling, not an emotion. I guess someone at Amazon is missing up the concepts. Yep. No, you're right. It is a feeling. I suppose disappointment is not necessarily an emotion, but that is how they've labeled it. So if you want to set the emotion to excited or disappointed, those are the two that you get. Probably need to talk about our taxonomy for that, though. TradeLast says he's played around with approximating emotions by mixing prosodies and volumes and pitches. That's actually pretty cool. And he mentioned, he provided a sample here on Twitch. Actually, it's pretty long, but let me see if I can copy some of it, and we'll try to play it. I take this. Oh, I see. You broke them into individual array values. So like I could take that one. I go to the developer console and I go to voice and tone and I drop this in here.
Mostly angry.
Ooh, interesting. So that angry was a volume of extra loud, a pitch of extra low, and a rate of slow. So that's kind of cool, Trey Last, that you've kind of built your own combinations to approximate emotion. I'm sure it doesn't land all the time, but I think that's an interesting approach. I wonder if there's a way to do something like that. Where, because I think as I looked at the not the breaks, but there's another SSML piece that I was just looking at, which was, what was the SSML reference guide again? Did I lose it? There it is. I was looking at emphasis. Emphasis is another property that we have where you can say strong, moderate, or reduced. Strong increases the volume, slows down the speaking rate. Moderate's kind of middle of the road, and then reduced decreases the volume but speeds up the speaking rate. So it makes the speech softer, faster. But it really feels to me like those emphasis values are predefined combinations of prosody, volume, and speak rate. So it seems like maybe we could combine more of those to create a new set of combinations that start to sound like angry or start to sound like sad, things like that. That would be pretty cool to document, Trade Last. And Miguel just wanted to remind us, the base human emotions are sadness, happiness, fear, anger, surprise, and disgust. Probably something to consider about whether we just change that to disappointment and happiness. Just to use, I think that's probably an interesting taxonomy to look at. That's a good point, Miguel. I'm going to just throw that as a note, and we'll see if we can talk to some people. No promises. I don't know what the future of our SSML implementations are, but that's a cool thing to think about for sure. Okay. A lot of comments here from, it looks like our DAG team replied as well, which is good. Martin, I'm going to sit down, guys, if that's all right. Martin just said, apologies, this is a vague question, but how complicated would it be to build a widget that was mapped to a routine, i.e. easily trigger on Echo Show without using a voice or external button? To build a widget that is mapped to a routine. I don't think it would be impossibly hard, right? You can use so you basically you want a widget on a screen like this. There. These are widgets. You want a widget that when the user touches it, it kicks off a routine. Boy, it feels like that would be doable. I mean, the widget itself, I think, has a click event, tap event. Like, you know, if I tap on the weather one, I'm pretty sure these have tap events. I don't know why that's not doing what I want. Got it. Great. Now do a thing. Calendar? Anybody? Yeah, so the calendar one launches the calendar. So I would imagine if you can launch a calendar like that, that you could also launch at least like a custom task within your skill, I would think. I haven't actually tried that though, Martin. That's not a vague question. That's a fantastic question. I don't know the answer, but as I continue down the path of this voice developer skill that I'm building, I'm going to give that a try. I was thinking that a widget would be kind of cool. I have all of this content, right? I have all of these speech cons and sound effects and all of these different SSML library stuff. And then I have all these questions and answers. All of this stuff is coming together in one skill. So I have tons and tons of content. It would be kind of cool to make a widget that just picks something at random and says, hey, did you know? Like, hey, here's a thing you might not realize or know or whatever. Great question. I'm going to have to look into that. Thank you. All right. I didn't see Karthik come in, but Kevin just welcomed Karthik. So welcome, Karthik, if you're here. Startup says, I'm just curious to know, can Amazon.time can be localized? as per localization and globalization. I mean, it can be localized to the point that the answer you get will be the user's time zone. And I believe that the time that you get, if I go look at that again, slot type reference for time, it's supported in all locales. What it doesn't say to me here is, well, because we're talking about just a time, not a date time. So this is only 3:30 in the afternoon or whatever. If we talk about Amazon.date, let me take a look at that one. That's got to have some localization in it, because next Tuesday or whatever, that starts to matter with what time zone you're in. Does it have localization? I don't think so, because we're just really talking about a date. There's no combination there. I think I understand what you're saying, but I think you're thinking about it the other way, Startup, where we want to tell a user a time in their localized time zone. Time zone, I believe, is something you can get from our personalization API. Personalization, Alexa. I'm pretty sure that's a thing you can get. Yeah. So it's in the settings API, but you can do time zone of your user and units of measure for your user. So you can also know, do they prefer things like miles or kilometers or pounds or kilograms or whatever. But that's part of the Alexa settings API, which allows you to dig into that. And there's obviously the possibility that they haven't specified their preference, which is then localized to what the user's settings are. But I mean, that's been around since 2018, so that's not new news. But when a user says 4:32 p.m., they're saying 4:32 p.m. in their locale. And I think now I'm trying to think through your question. If the user says 4:32 p.m., it's got to mean 4:32 p.m. for whatever they care about, whatever their thought is. And what you're asking is, can I get this in UTC or something like that? I think you'd have to take a combination of the user's time zone from the settings API in relation to the time that they use. But no, I don't believe that there's any localization for that. But this is a good question. I'm gonna kind of send some messages about that as well. David Curley mentions that it's even more clever than what I mentioned. If you say next Thursday, today, it'll give you Thursday next week. If you say Thursday, it'll give you Thursday this week, if it's not already Thursday, which is very cool. I agree. Oh, Thomas, you got skill creation failed to create a hosted skill. Git folder setup failed. So I haven't tried local debugging with a Alexa hosted skill, but I don't think that that's the issue. I don't think that your region, excuse me, is an issue. Let me take a look at this. This feels like a thing you should be able to set up anywhere. And just, excuse me, just behind the scenes, what's actually happening is that when you kick off local debugging, it actually makes a call to your skill and says, hey, the new endpoint is here. And it's like using ngrok or something like that, but it basically creates a tunnel to your local machine. And so when I'm using my devices, when I'm using the developer console to do any testing, it is now routing all of those requests directly to my local machine and running against my node instance that's running on my machine, basically. And then when I stop the local debugging, it makes a call back to replace to whatever the original endpoint happened to be, my Lambda function or whatever. So I've never seen that error specifically, Thomas, but again, we can continue looking into this because the local debugging is super powerful, and I would hate for you not to be able to use that. But it should be available everywhere. So I don't think that it's a locale issue either with your code or where your AWS resources are or anything. So we'll look. Okay. Brian Tarbox says a theme at Voice Summit was the overall lack of affect in both production and reception. People really want Alexa to recognize frustration. Yeah, I've heard that sentiment analysis and all that is something that I think a lot of people want. I know that is offered with Lex. So if you were building your own chatbot or your own voice bot, now you're building everything, but if you wanted to do that, you could use Amazon Lex on AWS, and it does provide sentiment analysis. There was a point when I was heavy into building a chatbot for my Twitch channel where I was using sentiment analysis. I was basically taking the message that I got from Lex, making a call. I'm sorry, sentiment analysis. I got the message, that I got from Lex, did the sentiment analysis on this, and then stored that in a number of different ways to let me know that, like, hey, this user sounds like they're frustrated more often than not, or they're using words that indicate that they're angry or bothered by it. And then we can start to tweak and change the kinds of responses that we're giving our user. But Alexa today does not provide any kind of sentiment analysis. And I feel like sentiment analysis as a whole is challenging, but I don't think that it would be very hard, considering most of the technology already exists, to be able to plug that in. And as part of the developer, the manifest that comes into your skill, the request, it should just be another property in there that gives some indication. Because again, we don't provide you with the speech that the user said. So we'd have to do the sentiment analysis and provide you a score, but you wouldn't be able to compare the score to the words and see like what they said, because you wouldn't receive the words. But the sentiment analysis score, right, which usually runs from -1 to +1, that feels like something that could be doable. So Brian, let me throw that on my pile of things to look into. Alan, prisoner wants to know a widget that triggers a routine. That sounds like something that should be provided by Amazon. Well, I think the widget developer themselves decides what happens when you tap on it. Maybe I'm wrong. I've not actually built a widget for myself yet. I've read the docs and played with some things, but not actually gone through the whole process of publishing one. The second question is, are widgets GA yet? That's also not to know. I'm hoping that changes soon, but no, as of now, they are not GA. Right. Okay, moving on. W. Giorgio would like some feedback on a post he made in Slack. He doesn't understand why his policy isn't okay. This is actually a really good one for the DAG team while we have them here. DAG, if you have seen in the general channel of our Slack, the Alexa community Slack, let me do a quick commercial here while I'm doing it. For any of you that are joining us that may be like, what Slack? What is he talking about? You can go to alexa.design/Slack. We have an entire Slack community there where a lot of the people that are here on office hours and a number of other places all kind of congregate during the day. And as they're working on skills and they have questions, this is the place where they ask them. If you're getting started, or even if you're an advanced developer for Alexa and you have questions about how something works or why it doesn't work, Slack should be one of the first places you go. We have a community of almost 3,000 people that are sitting there helping, answering, engaging with one another. And W. Giorgio, or William Ronholt, as he is on Slack, sorry for doxing you there, he has a challenge because he published a skill and it had a privacy policy. Then he updated his privacy policy URL and went through certification, and he's not using any private information anyway, and they're giving some issues because they're saying he still needs to have a privacy policy, which I don't think is true. If you're not collecting any user information, I don't believe that you need any privacy policies, but I am not an expert on our policies. That is our DAG team, and maybe they have something more they can add to that. But Will Wronghold, he posted it at 8:56 Eastern this morning. There's been a few comments, but nothing that is terribly productive for helping him solve this. So DAG team, if that's something that you guys can look at and have a chat with Will, that would be wonderful, because I don't know the answer to this one. It feels like basically the domain expired for his privacy policy, so the URL that he has provided doesn't work anymore. He's provided a new updated one, and that's not working. He's tried to remove private information. That's not working, but he wants to get to a point where he can get through certification again, which makes total sense to me. So that's Slack. Check out Slack, everybody. Okay. I scrolled too far. Okay, so Brian Tarbox thinks all skills now need a privacy policy, which is fair, but that means that his new updated URL should work. And he just has he's pointing to a GitHub page, which has his privacy policy, which should suffice. Okay. Let's see. Thomas is still struggling with VS Code. I was trying to create one from VS Code as a first try. I got a very similar message when trying to import an existing skill. Yeah, it feels like there's something missing there. I'm not aware of any reason why you being in an international locale should cause any issue. So I'm still curious to know, or take a closer look with you. We'll do that. Prisoner says, again, back to the routine widget. My thinking here is that widgets do have configuration, if I remember. So it may be interesting if Amazon provided a configurable widget where you could set what routine it should trigger, or a routine that is triggered by a widget in addition to other triggers. That could be pretty powerful on top of routines, which are getting very powerful. Agreed. I'll continue to dig into this. I don't have answers for you on that one, but we'll take a look. Gavin says, I have to give a privacy policy for all skills, and I don't collect any personal data. So thank you guys for correcting me. I get fuzzy on some of these details, having been around so long. The rules have changed over time, and I can't always remember where we stand on that. It sounds like the DAG team is going to take a look, and will W. Georgia, they'll take a look and hopefully respond to you. That's excellent. Sikander Hasnain says, hello, I'm doing business on Amazon. Let's connect and start business on Amazon. Awesome, Sikander. Welcome. You're on LinkedIn. Thank you. You can connect with me if you'd like. But I don't know how I can help you, but if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Gavin says, I've had multiple issues with the review team and privacy policies not being available, even when they are. I pushed this with the Contact Us team and had to give in and create a new domain just for Alexa privacy policies. Interesting. I wonder if internally there are some policies about what is considered a valid privacy policy URL, because I think that's a pretty big hurdle to expect someone to have their own custom domain. I mean, most of us as developers, I have 20 domains. And most of them are up and running and working in some fashion. So I could very easily just slap a privacy policy behind them, but I think that seems like a step too far. I would think that a GitHub IO page, or even something that could be relatively static, like on a WordPress blog or something like that, those all have to qualify too, even without a custom fancy domain name. So I don't know if that's the problem, but I hope that is not the problem. All right, so Thomas, I'll continue on. Okay, so Dag says, regarding widgets triggering routines, this does not seem to be a currently available functionality. However, this is a fairly popular request in our user voice feature request platform. And then they provided a link on all the channels here, so you may have seen this message. You can head over to user voice and you can vote that up. So if you guys aren't aware of user voice is a place that you can go to make feature requests. So I have that here. You can go to alexa.design/uservoice to just go to the home page, but you can certainly use the URL that was provided in the chat. And user voice is a place, if you have an idea for like, man, I wish Alexa could do this thing, like the emotions are another good example. I wish there were a bunch of other emotions that we supported. That is the place to make your feature requests. These are being funneled directly to our product team. They then look and evaluate at what they can fit on their roadmap when. But if you want to get their attention, if you want to make sure that you're on the radar, that's the place to do it. As much as I wish it was just email Jeff and hopefully magic will happen, user voice is a far better place to handle things like that. Okay. Goodness, every time I scroll, there's like 10 more things. This is great. Tapster says, I got stuck with a method that certification used to check the privacy policy was being flagged as a bot, so our network blocked it only from this Amazon check. It worked fine everywhere else. I had to open a rule in our bot defender to make it work. That's pretty funny. The only time it doesn't work is when it's being tested, but at all other times it does. Well, I'm glad you discovered that, Tapster, and were able to solve it. Okay. David Curley says, I have an auto skill, yeah, that one, that figures out the user's actual time zone at the time of request by feeding their latitude, longitude coordinates from the request into a time zone API. The Alexa settings API assumes they're accessing the skill from their primary location. So how you do this depends on what the skill does. David, the other challenge with this, of course, is that not all skills get that lat long. You have to be running on specific devices. And devices that use the phone as their communications mechanism, so like Alexa Auto, Echo Buds. There's a couple of other.
This might answer your question.
Whoa, Alexa.
A car is a
Stop. Echo Buds are another example, but things that communicate through the phone, those are things that can give you location data. And so you can get the lat long on those things. But for a normal skill, if they're not running it on one of those devices, you do not get latitude, longitude, and you'd be stuck with their primary location. Because those are the mobile solutions. I think that the Alexa app also gives you lat long. I'd have to double check that. I'm not certain. But I think all the mobile devices, any device that can determine its own latitude and longitude, which is mostly just stuff through the phone, makes it pretty easy to determine that. But that does not happen all the time. Okay, TradeLast says, I've seen redirects cause trouble in privacy policy URLs as well. Is the rejection happening in certification or in the automated validation step? That's an interesting point too. Maybe it doesn't allow the automated test. Maybe it doesn't allow it to travel through redirects. That could also potentially be an issue. I could see that. And of course, as David Curley mentioned, you also have to request permission to get access to lat long and all of those kinds of things. So yeah, useful thoughts as we go through all this. And this is one of the reasons I'm building that voice developer skill, is just so you can get a feel for how a lot of these things work and function without having to go build your own. All right, I have somehow made it to the list, made it to the bottom of the list. I don't see any other questions. I don't think I've skipped anything. So we've caught up. We are here. I don't have a lot of other things really to talk about. As I mentioned, I'm going to be at the Momentum Developer Conference this week. Once we get into November, it gets pretty busy also. I'm going to be speaking at an event called Tech Bash, which is right outside of like Philadelphia, Scranton, New Jersey area. Is it Scranton, PA? It's Scranton, PA. But it's actually in the Poconos area of Pennsylvania at a Kalahari. There's lots of awesome software development conferences at Kalahari's. But I will actually get to give a keynote there, which is kind of cool. And Lita Gemini will be there as well. So it's a beautiful area. And that's in middle of November. I'm also going to the Caribbean Developers Conference. You can find that at cdc.dev. That's their website. The first time I heard about this conference, the Caribbean Developers Conference, I thought, oh man, this is just an excuse for developers to go sit on the beach and have work pay for it. And I was delighted that actually was not the case at all. So Caribbean Developers Conference is held in the Dominican Republic in Punta Cana, which is a beautiful area right on the beach. And it's put on by 4 or 5 folks that grew up in the Dominican Republic. They are citizens of the DR, and they have found jobs at places like Facebook and Google and Amazon and Microsoft and like big global tech companies. And so they realized that there are all these amazing conferences and events for all sorts of people all over the US and Europe, India, Australia, all over the place. But there wasn't anything like that happening in the Dominican Republic, a rather small country with not a huge tech population. And so they decided to put this event on. And all of the attendees are from the Dominican Republic. They're aspiring developers or professional developers themselves. And then most of the speakers that come from a lot of those bigger tech companies to share their ideas about building software and technology. And I thought it was going to be a bunch of people trying to get a vacation in. But what it turned out to be was this incredibly rewarding experience where you're talking with people that so incredibly value the fact that you were willing to take the time to come and talk with them about the technology and how it works and help them understand how to build things using those platforms. It was great. So that was in 2019. Obviously, COVID has thrown some things in the way, but they're back this year. And so that's early, like November 3rd through the 5th in Dominican Republic. And so I'm really looking forward to getting back there because it was one of the more rewarding events I've had an opportunity to speak at. And then reInvent. I don't know if anybody else is going to reInvent. I'd love to. I'm thinking maybe we even set up like a little Alexa meetup. We'll just meet at a bar or a restaurant someplace. But I will be at reInvent the whole week. So if you're going to be at reInvent, hit me up. Let me know. Miguel wants to know if I'm going to be at the Web Summit in Lisbon. I'm not going to Web Summit this year. That's an event that's on my radar, though. I like it. But I've not been to Web Summit before. So I'm looking forward to getting a chance here in the future to check that one out. Brian Tarbox wants to know if there's any chance that the Alexa team could bring one of each device to reInvent. Right now, there's no place that we can see the devices before buying. Well, Brian, one of the things you could do, if you have an opportunity to go to CES, we have a huge setup there. That's a consumer electronics show that's held in Vegas early in January. I would only go if you're already planning on going. I wouldn't go to CES just to see this, but at CES, they have a huge thing. It's a whole smart home. There's all sorts of awesome functionality, and they have lots of the devices. I don't know if they have all of them, but they have lots of the devices. But what I will tell you is that Amazon has a remarkably lenient return policy. And so my opinion is, if you want to try a device and see if you like it, see if it works for you, or even, give something a quick test, buy one, return it. Keep the ones you like, obviously. I'm not suggesting that you just use it as a library. But there are many ways to do that. And I wish that there was a way to get real testing on real devices. I mean, our developer console allows you to simulate a lot of our devices. I have a device lab here too. So if there's ever a time where you want to schedule 15 minutes, I'd be happy to try to test your skill on a specific device if that's something that would work for you. But as far as getting your hands on a lot of them, I do see a lot of devices in Targets, in Best Buys. So you might try going to those stores as well. But yeah, having a place to just see all of the devices is pretty challenging, Brian. I think, if I'm being honest, I probably have the most comprehensive collection of first-party Alexa devices maybe anywhere, because I want to make sure, I just buy one, make sure that I have all of this stuff so that I can test and understand. When you come to me and say, hey, I've got an Echo Show 15 and it's doing this weird thing, it's incredibly beneficial for me to be able to then go to my Echo Show 15 and test and use it. Or even like the original Echo Show, right? Like I have all of these devices sitting here so that I can use them and test on them. But I don't imagine there are many other places that have something like this. It would also be very cool to set up a lab in Seattle. Now, of course, it would require a trip to Seattle for anyone, but that's also an interesting concept, to just have a place where people could come in. This would have to be scheduled an appointment, like you'd have to meet with one of us to go into it. But to have a lab where you could come in and try a bunch of different devices specifically. Interesting idea, Brian. I like it. It doesn't exist today, but it's an interesting thing to think about. Revital wants to know, how can I control all lights from Alexa in the car if I don't have a hub for all of them, but only for the Philips Hue? So Revital, the way that I solve this problem in my house is I don't have any light bulb hubs. I don't have any hubs of any kind. What I do instead is I've actually physically replaced the light switches in my home. And so once a light switch has been replaced, it doesn't matter what the bulbs are or the hubs or anything like that. I can turn that light switch on and off just by tapping on it, or I can talk to a voice assistant and be able to interact with that directly. So my recommendation is, if you want to be able to control your lights in your house without worrying about what brand they are or anything like that, get some light switches. I have Wi-Fi ones. They're made by Belkin. They're a brand called Wemo. But there are a number of different vendors that make them. And by replacing the light switches, now I can turn lights on and off any time that I want. In fact, I don't think I have it set up here, but like even the lights that I have, wow, that was weird. Where did it go? Somewhere I had a, I wonder if that crashed out or what. If I go to Elgato, so is that going to fire up? Oh, no. So I can turn one of them off, but I can't turn both off. So a little dimmer, a little brighter. I've had some struggles with the Elgato lights, which are what I use for like lighting here. But outside of that, almost every light in my house is now controlled by a smart light switch, and that's what I would recommend. Okay. Revital also says, how come I'm talking to the Alexa and the Echo Show is answering? It probably thinks it hears you better. So if you have multiple devices in the same room, the one that thought it heard you the fastest is usually the one that will respond. So if you're standing near a wall or devices are configured near walls, sometimes the bouncing of sound will create that behavior. But that's the only time I've really seen that. Oxygen Box remembers going to CompUSA to test software he was developing on various computers. Wow, you went into CompUSA with like a thumb drive and just like installed your software on random computers? That's hardcore. I like that. I don't recommend it. I'm not recommending anyone do that ever, but that's pretty hardcore. I like that. And then Gavin also says developer discounts would be nice. I agree. What I don't know is how do you handle that? Is there, like, would you have to have a limit of one? I don't know if that you would even be able to do that. Like, I'm trying to think about the concerns that the retail team would have, right? If we set it up so that there is a store and you could go in as a developer and you could buy a device, just one of them, what would stop anybody that just wants one of them from buying it at that discounted price? What is the qualification that I have to use for you to be a developer? Do you have to have published a skill? I don't know. I'd have to look into that. But I still have grand aspirations, and I'll probably get a chuckle from Tamsin behind the scenes here. But like, I still want to create this store where you guys can buy like cool T-shirts and hoodies like this or whatever. And it feels like in there would be a really cool place to be able to buy devices also. I can see that, certainly at a discounted price as well. But man, yeah, that could get real tricky. I'm not sure the best way to approach that, but something to think about. It's good feedback, Gavin. Thank you. All right, we're at 12:51. I just looked out my window and realized I have another bit of feedback I can share with you. I think I've mentioned to you guys before, I have a robotic lawnmower. It drives around my lawn. I can tell it to mow the lawn, but it's on a schedule and does it every day. And leaves have started falling. And I was really optimistic that this little robotic lawnmower was going to zip around my lawn. It was going to kind of mulch up all the leaves so I wouldn't have to rake them. But it's doing something magical. It's still mowing the lawn. The grass is getting shorter. But somehow every single leaf is fine. It's not even cutting them. It's not even slicing them in any way. So I think I have some raking in my future, or at least a leaf blower. We'll see. Gavin says, or bring back swag. Just as a reminder for any of you that may have been here a long time, it used to be that when you published a skill from time to time, like monthly, we would have a T-shirt. We'd have some kind of cool, like themed T-shirt just for that month. And if you published a skill in that month, we would send you a T-shirt. And it was usually themed or whatever. And we even had some in the very early days that were like, I published one of the first 1,000 skills, right? That was also kind of cool. I'm with you, Gavin. I think that there's a lot of things we could be doing, but we also can't do all the things. So let me throw that to my team as well. How do we, I know that my team would love to see more skills, better skills. I'd be also curious to know if you guys want to throw it in the chat. How many skills do you have in your developer console that will never be published? If I look at my list, if I go to my developer console list and I look at my list of skills, I have, come on, internet. Please go. In my list, I have, how many? I have 77 skills in my list, but I think I probably only have 10 that are published. Yeah. Now, I probably built way more demos than most of you, but I'd be curious to know what percent, maybe that's the question. How many skills do you have that are unpublished? How many skills do you have that are published, or maybe just a percentage? That might be a cool thing to know. Yeah, this is awesome feedback. Thank you, guys. Frank says he would like to be able to use a widget on his Echo Show 15 screen to trigger a widget, like to make a different widget appear. That's kind of cool. Added to my list of feedback. Gavin Watson says he's got a nice collection of swag. Maybe one day it'll end up on eBay and sell for a fortune. Yeah, those old T-shirts, you can retire on those, man. Brian Tarbox says, how about a shirt that says, I got 1 million utterances? That'd be pretty cool. That'd be super cool. W. Giorgio said he got an echo from building a skill a while back. Yeah, we used to do a lot more giveaways. We haven't done that many recently. David Curley says he has 135 that will never be published. Dana Voice has 100 skills in his thing. Tradeless says, I got swag from Amazon back in 96 just for buying books from them. W. Giorgio has 1 that will never be published. Fangam has 25. Brian Tarbox got an Echo Plus for being polite at reInvent. That's awesome. These are great stories. Gavin says he's maybe got 2 or 3 that will never be published. All right. Dana says a number of them I built for my use and some would never pass certification. Yeah, I think that's fine. The reason that I asked this question is I personally believe that there are lots of reasons why someone might build a skill only for themselves, or they might build a skill that they never intend to publish for a variety of reasons. But it's still a thing. It's still a thing they use or build or whatever. Because I'll tell you, internally, we look at metrics like what percentage of skills are published, how many skills get created and then never make it to the finish line. And the point I'm trying to make in that argument is that, like, we as Alexa, as the organization, shouldn't be thinking about how do we get every skill that's created to be published. I don't think that's a reasonable metric. It really should be how are people using them, and in what way are they meaningful, and are they building software that serves a purpose for them? And publication may not be the final thing. Habuma says he's done a cleanup, 17 skills total, 5 published, 12 that never will be. This is awesome, guys. I'm going to collect all this data and try to share this. This is very helpful. David Curley has 167 skills, about 10% are published. The unpublished ones are largely skills to learn or play with individual features. Yeah, I'm the same way. Totally feel that. Habuma has a lot of sandbox skills, just stuff to try or use as demos when he presents at conferences. I have the same kind of setup. TradeLast has 82 in the developer console, 16 of which are published. Lots of the unpublished ones are experiments or sandboxes. Yeah, I feel the same way. So this is confirming my suspicion, guys. Thank you for sharing this. All right. Well, we are at time. We only have a couple of minutes left, so there's a couple more comments here. I don't want to miss them, but I do want to thank you guys all for tuning in, sharing this feedback, and we're going to continue to ask these kinds of questions in surveys, whether that's in Slack or here on the channel during office hours. But as much as you can, I would love to, as much as you can, participate in those surveys, because we're asking those questions to gather data, and data helps us make decisions. So when you see, especially like Amanda or some of the other folks that are in there, if they're asking questions, if you can provide your feedback, even if it's just a question or two, it goes a long way in helping us understand where you guys all are. So Rockalok said he's got 31 published, though learning to build skills, I learned JavaScript, so I have about 60 more that will never be published. Yeah, this is awesome, guys. This is great data. David Curley wants to know, what's the quickest way to get a list of published and unpublished skills? There is not an easiest way. This is a piece of feedback that I shared recently, actually. But if you go into your developer console, if you just go to, I'll drop this URL in the chat. If you go there, this is just like your homepage for your developer console. You'll see your whole list there. And if you scroll to the bottom of your list, it'll tell you how many there are. But you would have to actually go through and individually count which ones are published. And that's under the status column. The feedback that I provided is that status column, modified language, all of them should be sortable. And they're not today. So you would have to just kind of scroll down and see how many say live, because live is published. So that you could just scroll through and find your live ones, and then that'll tell you how many you actually have in production. For me, it's also a clear indication if I have uploaded an icon, like in the far left column of that page, if I actually have an icon there and it's not just a little gray question mark, it's a good chance that it's at least close to published, if not actually published. So you might be able to just scroll and look at your icons too. All right, I got to run. I wondered if there was maybe a SMAPI call. No, I don't believe so. Habuma says, I'd love to be able to filter that list. Don't worry, I have pushed that feedback hard. We have a very, very long list of things that I'm hoping I can start sharing as those little tweaks start to come through. I'm looking forward to that. All right, I think I've gotten through everything. Thank you guys all so much for being here today. We'll be here again next week, and Brian Tarbox will be here joining me, so I look forward to it. See you all then. Bye-bye.